Well, looks like we're live. So, just, 1.5 minutes early. Beats being late. So, I thought that I would just stream to YouTube tonight. And what I was thinking of talking about was, the other day I was talking about the magic of law, and I kind of let it slide in the talk I did. I'll take this a bit closer. I did let it slide a bit because it's really hard for someone who's spiritually inclined but who has a lot of issues with it to really talk about these kinds of things. So I would describe myself as a woman of faith, but I no longer go to church. I don't believe in religion. I believe that there's something out there. I really love the Star Wars movies because they kind of went to my thing, that there is some sort of a link and we are all interconnected. And I've had experiences that, you would sort of think, what the hell's going on here? I can't explain it. I don't even try to explain it. It is just what it is. One of my experiences when my mum died. So we sat with her in the nursing home for 4 days while, we were told to prepare for her dying. They didn't know how long it was going to take. You don't know these things. And what I can tell you about my mum is she was bloody stubborn. And, things had to happen on her terms. And she hung in there. So we were holding vigils type thing. My niece and my sister had to work all the time. I got the time off from work. I sort of said, I'd really like to sit with Mum. And they said, just go. You're going to be useless here anyway. So I took the time off work, and my husband and I, my husband took time off work. We went in there every day and just sat with her and talked to her. She wasn't conscious, and when she did come to, she really wasn't with us. But I tell you what, the last day and a half, the atmosphere in her room changed. It was cloying. It was like have you been in an overcrowded train on a summer's day when the air conditioning just can't keep up? You kind of get this feeling of everybody crowding you out, and you just want to get out of there. It's like full on. And that's what it felt like. And my niece would come in and she'd say, gee, it's pretty heavy in here. And my sister, when she showed up, even her husband noticed the atmosphere. My husband noticed the atmosphere. It was palpable. And here's the thing that I usually only say in private to people I know. So me broadcasting this on YouTube is highly unusual, but I think it goes to some of the things I want to talk about. So my niece was due to come back, and she was expected within minutes. And my mum's breathing was getting really, really slow. And, she was fading. We knew she was going to go at any moment. And I sort of got this feeling. My dad and my brother, my older brother, died the year before. So in 2017, I lost my brother, and then 5 weeks later I lost my dad. And my mum was fine after that. She didn't go downhill until their wedding anniversary in the May the following year. And from that moment on, it was really, really fast. So I got this feeling that my brother and my dad were there, and they were standing behind me. And I was talking to my mum, and I said, look, Mum, if you've got to go, just go. Don't hang on. If Regina misses you, going, she's been here the whole time. And it got really, really overpowering. And suddenly it was like she would take a breath and breathe out, and then it took forever for that next breath. And a couple of times I thought she'd already died, and she'd breathe again. And then suddenly I got this feeling of my dad and my brother actually walking through me and taking her hand, and I clearly hear them saying, "It's time to go." And suddenly I got this feeling of real joy, which is really weird. I mean, my mum's dying. But it was this real joy of she's going home. And that to me was overwhelming. It was like, here we are, we're so sad she's come to the end of her life, and we know everything that her life was. But she is going to a better place. It was like she's the only person I've ever been with as they were dying. I've never experienced anything like it. And I'm telling you, as sad as I was for my mum to have left, I was so glad for her, because, this whole life after death thing took a different meaning for me, simply because of this whole feeling that I had. So, was that, you would get people saying, "Oh, you were just so emotional, you imagine it, blah, 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 blah." You know what? I don't care. It's made me feel better about life and death in general. And the reason I shared it with you is because being there at the moment when my mum took her last breath and feeling what I felt, and, as soon as she passed over, and, all of the happiness of the family, and they left, it was like the room suddenly became cold and empty. It was like I was looking at a body, and it was just her body. She wasn't there. It's like when we buried her, I knew that it was only her body going in the ground, because she's not there. And, I take great comfort from that. Am I delusional? I don't know. I hang on to these positive feelings. But as much as I believe in this greater spiritual energy, I also have a problem with this whole clairvoyancy stuff, people telling you your future, and with the law of attraction. And I'll probably touch on the law of attraction first, because that's the easier one to explain. The law of attraction is basically you send out positive vibes and you get the positive outcome. So if you want to own a 3-story house, you think about it. I mean, people go to the place where they want to live. And that kind of happened to me as well, where I've been able to do that. Or, I say, "Oh, look, I'll trust you to find my new house." That happened in Kalgoorlie. And, by the time I got back from having spoken to the real estate agent who'd shown me a few houses, and he said, "What you want just isn't on the market." By the time I got home, he phoned me up and he says, "Oh, you know what? I don't know how the hell you did it, but your house is coming on the market tomorrow. Do you want to come back and have a look at it before we put it on the market?" So I drove up the next morning, had a look at it, and bought the house on the spot, because it was exactly what we were looking for. And it was in our price range. And, this real estate agent couldn't get over it. So the law of attraction can work, but there's a really, really big downside. And it's the downside that makes me think, let's go to the psychological explanation of the law of attraction rather than the spiritual one. Because the downside is, if you are thinking positively about things and you're doing all of your creative visualization and you do all of this stuff and it doesn't happen, and then the next thing imagining doesn't happen, and the one after that doesn't happen, and it keeps not happening, you end up becoming really negative in yourself, and it can cause great depression, and people let go of their dreams, and all sorts of weird and wonderful stuff happens. And I have a problem with that because, there's this great line, not sure which movie it was in. It was in one of them where Morgan Freeman, I think he was president, so it must have been Deep Impact maybe, where he says, God hears all our prayers, but sometimes the answer is no. And that's the cautionary tale. So what I did earlier, and the reason why I've got the game up is so that it would be easier to actually go to a page and show you. So I'll just put that one across. So there's a lot of psychological things about the law of attraction. So I just Googled this one page. It was the first thing that came up. It sounded like it was close to what I wanted to talk about. And, this guy says, the law of attraction is not a universal law. You don't have to buy a book on the law of gravity to understand that gravity works and, to get to use gravity. So the law of attraction isn't the same thing. And he talks about all of the things that are wrong with the way that The Secret is sort of propounded. That, the law of attraction works. It's positive thinking and, So I'll just read some of it because I'm not sure how good it's showing up on your screen. I imagine it's not very good. So, he says, the law of attraction experts even use the edict, ask, believe and receive. And by these criteria, the success rate for goal fulfillment using the law of attraction should be close to 100%. And it's not. It just isn't. So, what are we missing? And the experts talk about, what they're missing. So he proposes that, we replace the law with a principle, and that it's the principle of attraction, because you've probably heard about it, like attracts like. It is a psychological basis for that. So this isn't magic that we're talking about. It's just sort of, positive people tend to be surrounded by like-minded positive people. You tend to put yourself into groups with people who think the same as you do. So if people reflect all of this negative stuff to you, then maybe that's what you're putting out there. And it's really hard for me to, cope with when my husband goes all negative and sad, or friends do it. Because I know when I do it, I get into a funk. But generally, my life is really well balanced. I'm on the same plane as all my friends. We tend to think alike, which sometimes puts me in a bubble, but my sister and I are well aligned in certain things, and politically we could not be more opposite. So you don't have to be alike in everything. But so one of the interesting things I found in this article is that he puts the issues, with the law of attraction on one side, followed by the principle of attraction. So, positivity, yep, law of attraction, you attract it, and, in the principle of attraction, that too. But where I found it really interesting, and this relates to any legal matter you might have, is that, the helping career and the law of attraction is detrimental to your career. And I totally agree with that, because you're kind of handing over everything to something other and letting things slide in yourself. So the principle of attraction apparently works better, but, down the bottom, the goal, the goal is perfection in the law of attraction, whereas it's optimal in the principle of attraction. And, success, it's evidence-based for the principle of attraction. So I'm going to get rid of this one now because I've really covered what I want to from something that you can Google. So with the law of attraction, you wouldn't want to use it in a legal setting, because if you're handing over everything to other, then you might be missing out on things that you need to do. And that's a problem, because you can't drop the ball. You can't rely on magically the documents you need will turn up. You've got to be proactive in finding them. You've got to be proactive in finding a lawyer. You've got to be proactive in doing things. And that's where the law of attraction falls down. And I couple the downside of the law of attraction with the downside of clairvoyance. Now, I don't tend to wear a lot of jewellery at all, but I definitely don't wear my wedding ring. Now, people assume that that's because my husband and I aren't married, and I call him my husband because he's my de facto. And I hate to burst your bubble, but it was in a church. It was a small wedding, but it was in a church. And the reason I don't wear my wedding ring is because my husband doesn't wear his. So his kind of got destroyed in a workplace accident. And I sort of thought, you know what, if he doesn't have to wear his, I'm not wearing mine. I'm still as married as I ever was. But one of the things that I noticed, and my mum used to go to clairvoyance, and, there's lots of really serious stories about that I could tell you. And when I go to see a clairvoyant, you can tell the ones that sort of have an idea from the ones that definitely don't. Oh, look, my little mate's back. Let me just give him his treat. He's a good boy. There you go. So, the clairvoyants that tend to read you, that just go with how you dress, how you look, how you speak, whatever. They look at my bare hands, and one of the things that they will focus on is that the love of my life is just around the corner. Like, the man of my dreams is on his way. And I've had clairvoyants where they're there, look, I'm kind of really confused because I know you're married and your husband is, and would describe my husband to a T, and then sort of say, I know you're not wearing a wedding ring, what happens next is. And they're straight out saying, I've noticed the fact that you aren't wearing a wedding ring. Real life me sort of thinks this is unusual. And, they question themselves because they're doubting what's coming through. And then, I sort of say, well, you're one of the few that's actually spotted it and said, I know you're married. And, it's all good, I am married. Husband alive and well, and, not looking to trade him in. So, but I've just got to keep an eye on the boy because he's not allowed to lick himself at the moment. He's on antibiotics, so, and he hasn't got his collar on. Anyway, so the issue with clairvoyance is one of the reasons most people go to see a clairvoyant. They're depressed and they want to know there's something better around the corner. They want to know what's around the corner, and then they, what do they need to do next? Hang on a sec. Hey, Bill, can you check what he's got, please? Thanks. The joy of doing a live feed. Anyway, I've locked the door so he can't come back. I'll be in trouble. So, we want to know what's next. Want a bit of reassurance. Want to know it's not always going to be funk. I know people who've gone to a clairvoyant and said, I want to know what's going to happen in this particular thing. A friend of mine told me that she'd gone to this particular clairvoyant about her legal issue, but hadn't told the clairvoyant anything. She said this woman was amazing, and I always check out clairvoyants. Once people say, they're amazing, and I went and saw her, and this woman knew stuff that, we didn't have conversations about it, and she was spot on with what she said. So she's, one of the few that I sort of think, yep, she's spot on. But there's still a problem with it. Now, this particular woman that was spot on, she was also really, really good in saying, whatever I've said, don't take that as being set in stone. Today, that's the situation according to what you've got planned and what you're doing. But if you change what you're doing because of what I've said, you might break that. But because she was spot on with all of the things that she said, and we didn't have general conversation in our case, and my friend said she hadn't had a really good conversation with her about her matter either, it leads me to believe that, she knew what she was doing. I'm into studying body language and the way that people speak and how you let secrets out. And a lot of clairvoyants who aren't really clairvoyant, they can get a lot out of you. I mean, one of the things I do is I dress totally different when I go and see a clairvoyant. I do my hair differently. I'll either wear a lot of makeup or, just change things up so that it's not like the me that I am in myself and every day. And I mean, I'd never wear my wedding ring, and obviously there isn't an indentation or anything, so you wouldn't notice it. But the problem is, if you've got someone who's going to just spin you a tale and you don't know if that's who you've got, lots of people will say there's no such thing as a clairvoyant. I beg to differ, but it's what you do with the information and why you want it. If you're really desperate, I think you shouldn't go and see a clairvoyant, because false hope is sometimes worse than, just telling yourself you're going to get through something, no matter how hard it is. But if a clairvoyant tells you this is going to happen, then you might drop the ball on what you need to do. And, that's a real big thing. It's a real issue with me. So that as background, now let me talk to you about the real magic involved in doing your legal issue. If you've got to go into mediation, or, you've got to instruct a lawyer or whatever, go in, do your prayers if you're that way inclined. If you're religious in any way at all, you can burn your candles, you can do whatever. You can meditate. You can just sit quietly and meditate in the lead up to it, sort of put out to the universe the outcome that you'd like. Ask for help finding a really good lawyer. But the magic actually kicks in with what you do. So do your research on the lawyer. Have they dealt with cases like that? So sometimes what you can do before you have your appointment is you can actually look at some of the cases that have gone through court. And, did they really win? Was it a technical win or was it a good win? A lot of cases settle out of court. If your lawyer says, look, I've settled a lot of cases out of court, sometimes, some of their clients who are really happy are happy to talk to you. The lawyer would never give you their name, but if you were willing, if you wanted to, there's this whole thing about client confidentiality. You know, no one's ever supposed to know who was a client of a particular lawyer. But, I mean, if you look at the Google reviews, some of them are dodgy, you know. So are the positive ones dodgy or are the negative ones dodgy? You don't know. Just say, you know, I wouldn't mind talking to a couple of your clients about their experiences. And look at how many negative reviews there are just to see. And I mean, a lot of the times lawyers will look at their client list, and if the name doesn't ring true, it's like, you know, we don't know who you are, we've never dealt with you. If you want to take it further and tell us your real name, you know, get in touch and we'll talk about it. Sometimes people have a high expectation of what lawyers would do, and then when the lawyer can't do it because it's not possible under the law, they blame the lawyer rather than the legal system. It's a really hard call, but you can send out positive vibes and then do your research on the lawyer. You know, see how good they are. See how many recommendations they've got. Once you've got your lawyer, before your first appointment, this is really handy. Make sure that you can tell your story in an hour and highlight what documentary evidence you have for what you're saying. If it's a civil matter, if it's a criminal matter, you know, you really have to take in the police documents, you know, your summons and all the rest of it. Just be prepared for your appointment. Be prepared to be very succinct in how you tell your story. You know, keep it very professional and quick. And if you need to write it out like 2 weeks before and then you keep editing until you've got your story down pat, even if you write it out and you sort of say, oh, you know, when I say this, I've got this document that shows. Now, the document might not actually show what you think it shows, but if you give it to the lawyer, they'll be able to look over it later and, you know, as long as it's not a really long document, they might read it there and then. But if you can give the lawyer this one thing or just sort of keep it as a reference and as you mention things, tick them off. You know, see if you can go through the chronological order. You can do a chronology. So you do up a timeline. You know, the first time I spoke to the other side was this date, and this is what the conversation was about. It was a phone call, it was an email, it was text, whatever. You know, met them in person, met them at a party, met them at the bank, met them wherever. And then you go through every event after that, right through to today. Like everything that's happened, just list it. Once you know all of that, you're ready for your first appointment and to tell the lawyer, well, you know, this has happened, this is what I'm up to today, and this is the reason why I'm here. So you might be saying, you know, maybe you've got something with a bank and the bank's issued default notices and now they're asking for summary judgment. They've already filed documents. You know, you need to file a defence or a response, or, you know, you need to do something. Or maybe something's happened and you think that the person owes you something and you need to take them to court. You know, you lent someone $10,000, they said they'd paid back by a certain date, they haven't paid back anything, and you want the money back now. There's been a great big falling out with the families, so you need to sort it now. So you can go, and as long as you've got all of the information, you know, that, or at least you can say, I've got the information, these are the kinds of documents I have, and this is the order of things. For your first appointment, you pretty much just want an idea, do I have a case? Can I get this money back? Is it something that you can deal with? You know, there are some things that you'll have to deal with on your own, and other things you can get a lawyer for. Your lawyer will tell you, and they might advise you how to go about it if you have to self-represent. there's lots of ways that the first interview can go. And then the sheer magic of what happens next is you stay on top of things. Don't miss appointments. I've been in the office waiting for people to show up who forgot. All of these things, you've really got to be on top of them. What other documents do I need? Do I need to go to court? If your lawyer says, you don't need to go to court, me personally, I'd say just go anyway. Just go in there, make sure you know what's going on. It's, for me, I have trust issues. So, if I can go, I will go. I need to know what's going on. Stay on top of what's happening. If you have to self-represent, you've got a lot more to do in that way. But that's where the magic comes in. The magic is basically you're organised and you do what you need to do when it needs to be done, and you do it to the best of your ability. You do it, professionally. You deal with it, and you deal with it well. So you can go to church and you can pray and you can burn your candles in church and you can ask for prayers and you can do all of these things, but you've still got to do the hard yards. And that's basically what I sort of wanted to talk about. How do you get the magic happening? It doesn't mean you will definitely win, but I tell you what, it gives you a much, much better chance than if you just sort of hand everything over and blindly follow the lawyer. Trust me, I'm an expert on that particular one. Sometimes you have to read the documents really carefully, especially affidavits from the other side, so that, they'll say something that's a blatant lie. If you read it, you can pick it, you can figure out, have you got the evidence to disprove it? Have you got a letter where they said something totally different to you? Have you got an email? Have you got a text message? Was there a Facebook post where they said exactly the opposite? If you have, then you can use that in a reply, and you sort that, because if every affidavit you do can be used in court against you, so if you've been blatantly telling lies in your affidavits, don't be surprised if at trial counsel for the other side says, I understand that you said this, is that still your position? And you'll say yes, and they'll say, so you've never believed that black is white and white is black, that you've always been of the opinion that black is black? Oh yes, I'm a really straight down the line person. And so if I were to show you a document where you actually say the opposite, you would be surprised. And then, there's nothing like that. And then, well, can I draw your attention to this document? And, at this paragraph, can you read this line? And they read it out and it's exactly what I've said. I've never done that. So it happens. I've seen it happen a couple of times where people end up sitting there going, okay. Happens a lot in the movies, but it's never that spectacular in real life. It's just, I've seen barristers who very, very gently take you for a walk. If you want to watch a really, really good cross-examination, watch the Royal Commission videos. They are fabulous. They used to call Rowena Orr, is it Rowena? Miss Orr was shock and awe, because she would have these bank executives on there and, just gently ask them questions and they'd answer. They'd go, this is easy. This is so good. And then at the end she says, and what about this document? And it's like, far out, where'd she get that from? I loved the Royal Commission when the bankers were getting theirs back. I've got this tiny little bit of video where Council for NAB stood up and said something, and Commissioner Haynes just tore shreds off him. Just wasn't going to have it. Nah, wasn't going to have it. It was like 30 seconds worth of footage, but I used to play that just to make myself feel better over all the rubbish that we went through. You always think that's the quality of representation I want. And I hope that's the quality of representation you get, because that's what you need. And if you self-represent, just don't try to be spectacular like in the movies. Just have an idea of what questions you need the answer to that show that they knew that, that they're lying in whatever. It's just a gentle series of questions. You don't have to be really long-winded on anything. Oh dear. Should I get the baby? Would you like to meet? Oh, I think you've already met Oliver on this channel. I'm sure you have. Okay. Oh, Oliver. Come on. Come on. You come say hello to everybody. Come on. I'm sure they would love to meet you. Look at the scrumptious little monkey. Look, isn't he gorgeous? This is Oliver. Oh, and he's a spectacularly heavy, 7.5 kilos now. And he's not quite 9 months old yet. He's just about 9 months old. You're my big boy, aren't you? Eh? You're my big boy. He's been a bit sick today, so he went out for a walk, and he hasn't. We don't make him wear the big cone of shame on his walks. But, here's my gorgeous bub. There you go. You have that. So that's kind of all I really wanted to talk about. About the magic. It's, if you're talking about ritual magic, when you watch movies and there's druids doing their thing, or you see the wizard casting spells and the witches doing their brew, that's all you're talking about. It's preparation, knowing what you're doing it often enough to really learn. That's all you really have to do. You can do lots of research on how to approach things and how to write a really good affidavit. There's lots of Google Docs out there. Let me just see if I can. I'll pop this one up. Let's just do. I'll do a Google search rather than DuckDuckGo. You gonna let me do this? Hey, you gonna let me do this? So what we're gonna do is to write an affidavit. We can do it for. Yeah, we'll go for the family court. So the family court website actually has lots of ideas. Look, singlemum.com.au, how to write an affidavit for family court. So what do single mums say? This should be interesting. So this was written in 2015. So you've got to have the right format. You've got to give the right background information, financial information. It's all out there. So let me go to here. How to prepare a good family court. DIY Family Law Australia. So that's another website. So, family law information. Anyway, that's kind of just how quick it is to have things show up. Now, I use Google for this. I often use DuckDuckGo, and you get totally different results with DuckDuckGo. It's all a bit interesting though. So, have I got much more to talk about? I'm not sure. I know it's getting hot in this room. I've had to close the blind. I've got a roller blind and loud neighbours. So even though it's raining outside, we've had to shut everything up. But I think that's about it. I think I've covered enough on the magic floor, and the magic is really know your story, know what you need to do, know what kind of results you want, what you're aiming for, and then what's the best way to get there, and then make sure that you do the documents, you do the right things. One of the things, because I know that if you were to look up my case in the court archives, you know how the judge in the judgment will write, who did what, where, when, how, and, who the parties are and what their background is. Our stuff is totally wrong. Like, when we took the loan with the loan that we took with the bank wasn't to buy the farm, it was to refinance, because we were swapping banks, because the ANZ wasn't in the place. The only bank going was the National Australia Bank, because hubby was working away. It was really difficult to make it into the bank, at the drop of a hat. It was much easier to go with the local bank, and that's the only reason that we ended up with this bank. So the only reason that we really got in trouble is because we had to swap banks. I ended up keeping my bank account, so we're back with we're still with the original bank, but there you go. So the judges don't always get the full story, because sometimes it gets a bit confused on the way, it gets a bit muddled. So make sure that if your lawyer is going to draft the affidavits, that the information is correct, so that there aren't any big things that can shut you down later, because once it's in the courts, that's the story that gets recorded. There were so many things wrong with the affidavit that the first lawyer drafted for me, and I didn't want to sign it because it was just on really important points he got it wrong. He refused to change it. He told me, no, I'm not changing it, it's fine. And of course he hadn't gotten it together early enough, so we ended up, it was almost 8 o'clock at night. We'd gone to the city and we had to find someone who could witness the affidavits, because they needed to be in at 9 o'clock in the morning or something, because, I think we were already late or whatever, and it was awful. And of course, the bits that he hadn't corrected made it sound like we didn't even know, who the bank manager was. It was like utterly ridiculous. And I'm not absolutely brilliant, but I do know that, when you write a sentence a certain way, if you're not correct with it, people will interpret it a different way to what's intended. And that's what happened with this. I said, that's really bad English. You really need to change it, because the way that I read this statement, it says, oh, no, that'll be fine. It says exactly what you said. No, it doesn't. Oh, yes, it does. We get to summary judgment, and the master says, well, blah. And so, told you so. Our case shot for shit, because the lawyer didn't want to do his job. But anyway, I digress. I'm going to go and have my glass of wine now. I've only had a couple of schlucks. It's a bit sad. The game in the background. It's the only online game I do. It's a bit fun. I can't play it now because I've got a doggy. I've got the puppy. So you're going to say goodbye? Bye-bye. Oh, look. Here's my gorgeous boy. Anyway, I'm going to love you and leave you. Hope you have fun. Take it easy. I sure will. And winding down now. I'll probably change the times when I do the stream because I really can't be bothered this time of night. I don't know how people do this. I can't see it improving in winter. And when the hubster's home, it's very problematic. Anyway, I'm going to go. I'll sort things out. Think about how you want to approach your matter with the court. There are court documents that you can read. See if you can find them and read some of them. See how much detail they go into. It's nothing beats knowing what you have to do before you have to do it. It's just all preparation. And sometimes you might want to use a candle. You might want to burn a candle so that you can burn the document you've prepared because it's really bad. So, back to the old drawing board. And when you do that, don't burn your house down because that's never good. Anyway, we're going to go and we're going to watch some Deep Space Nine, I think. Sort out their problems for a change. Anyway,